doing that. For those of you, can I see a show of hands for people, this is the first time in the Founder Center? For people that is visit in here?
Okay, it's working. Thank you.
Did anyone go to middle school here? You don't have to admit that. So for those of you who don't know, this was a former middle school owned by the school district. Do we think we have sound, Stace?
Yes.
All right. I apologize to those at home. You really missed out. I'm sorry. So we are in the former middle school, and I'll cheat on my slides here, but if you haven't looked up, in 2022, our staff thought we had some water damage in our building. It was just, we were just coming out of winter, and we had some in one of the trusses. We thought we had some water buildup, so we had a contractor come in and kind of open it up, and it was much more grave than that. The wood trusses, the bowstring trusses that hold this building up, were failing. I'm not an engineer, but my understanding is the code for bowstring trusses has changed, and that everyone says that you can usually anticipate ones that are about 80 years old that they will potentially fail. For almost a year and a half, this gym was offline because the trusses had to be repaired. And the question was, should we be continuing to make an investment in a building that's of this age and in this condition? We did safely repair the wood trusses here. 2 trusses had failed, they were repaired, and all been stabilized and brought up to the current code. But it's about another $300,000 to close this up. And we've chose at this time that we can just do something a little bit better while we decide if this is where we're going to be for another 5, 10, or 20 years. Do we invest $300,000 to close the ceiling? So if you didn't know what you were looking at up there, that is what's going on up there on the roof. So, Stacey, can we have the slide with the pie chart? Okay. If you've been with the Parks District and you've been listening to our story for the last 9 years, this isn't new. This pie chart kind of breaks down where your taxes go. I think the statistic I heard once was 86% of Americans escrow their taxes. So you get your tax bill, you see the number, you have the shock face, and then you pay it and you kind of put it away. Not many people pull it out to look where their money goes. So 2.66% is what the Park District represents of your local property tax bill. Of course, we have great schools here in Frankfort. The majority of that tax dollars are going to your high school and grade school district. There are a number of other bodies on here that are close. We have the Frankfort Library. However, what I would say about the Frankfort Library is they don't just get money from they also serve and related residents. So Frankfort, like the residents that we call them Frankfort Square because there's Frankfort Square Park District. Those people are also paying into the Frankfort Library, as is the fire district. And then, of course, the community college, Will County, and the Forest Reserve are also getting funds from other. So the Frankfort Park District is one of the represents the second smallest portion there, and we aren't getting money from any other people other than Frankfort. The question that we're often asked again, and I've kind of said that, is why do other park districts have better facilities? Why are the playgrounds in Mokina better? Big Jeff particularly comes up a lot, and you can kind of see here on this slide where we measure up. Our tax rate is what limits our funding. So we have the lowest park district tax rate in the south suburbs. Flossmoor, if you've ever aware of their facilities, they have a golf course, an ice rink. They used to have 2 pools. Their property tax rate for the park district is 0.88. Frankfort's property tax is 0.22. So they're paying for all the services that they get over there. I would tell you the average resident in Homewood Flossmoor pays $900 annually to the district. And for a $500,000 house here in Frankfort, you're paying about $280 to the Park District. So again, not dismissive of your overall tax bill not being high, just trying to give you an understanding of why we don't. I can't tell you every summer we probably get 3 to 4. And our staff, you know, you call it the Frankfort Park District. Or yeah, we just moved here. We want to go to the pool. We don't have a pool. And I guess if it was that important, I guess I would think maybe they would have check that out, but people, just because people think so highly of Frankfort, their expectations are that those facilities would be here, have kind of missed that box when it comes to moving here. So it happens a lot. I kind of touched on this a little bit, but why do we have such a low tax rate? So when, as I mentioned, in the 90s, we lowered our tax rate, and then the state of Illinois instituted PTEL, and it's kind of locked in our rate. The Park District went from serving 3,000 people to nearly 20,000, adding 5.5 times the number of parks to manage. So for a long time, we had 3 parks: Main Park, Commissioner Parks, and Indian Boundary. And then they've just multiplied. We're on track to take, Crystal Brook is a new subdivision out on the east side of town. And we're on track to take another 11 acres with a pond and a dry bottom detention area that just adds to our cost of maintenance. What are our funding options? If we don't come to you, what happens? So referendum, that's where we go to the vote. We go to there's a question on your local ballot where we ask you for something. And what I'm asking for, I don't know yet. That's what we want to talk to residents about, what you would support and what you think we need. Non-referendum, every government agency has the ability to borrow money. Ours is very low. We can borrow $1.8 million for over a 25 period to manage. So like the high schools, the grade school district, the village, everybody can borrow money. Ours is very low, and it's all a formula based on your tax rate and your EAV. It's a little more complicated than I could probably do without a pencil and paper, and you probably would all fall asleep. Frank's smiling because it's true, right? So again, I've taken calls over the last few weeks on why people say, why do you keep asking? We told you no. Why do you keep asking? Well, as I mentioned at the gym, if you look up, we don't have the money to fix this gym. We have other failing infrastructure that we don't have the money for. $2 million doesn't go really far. We have 12 full-time employees. So the question is what's going to happen if we don't have the money? And so we keep asking because the need is really becoming important. Aging infrastructure, I kind of want to touch on this a little bit. The Founders Center, the building we're in, I said is 100 years old. The main part of the original part of the school was constructed in 1925. We should have a birthday party this year. We haven't planned one, but we should. Additions were added in 38, 57, and 62, and the Park District took ownership and started occupying the building in 1996. The Pent building, which is down the street, that's where we have our preschool. It's 5 days a week. It's very successful. It was constructed in the 1970s, and the last renovation was in 2001. Stace, let's see if we'll go to the next video. I think the next video is this. This is going to go through a number of slides, but I mentioned the wood trusses here. Again, we need an additional $300,000 minimal just to kind of repair the ceiling and put the soffits back in and then put the acoustic soundproofing that's up here.
Next slide.
We have roofs that need replacing, HVAC. The first slide is a little slow. This one's going to kick through. Sorry. Again, I need an IT person, but we don't have IT here. This is what we found when the wood trusses failed in 2022. We thought we would just had some water seepage in the roof line. The roof doesn't leak. We have no roof issues.
It's down here.
The trusses literally failed, and we were at risk of this whole building falling down. Thankfully, we had some great residents that used to live here that own a wood truss company, and they came to our rescue. But literally, the wood beams split and cracked. I can barely look at the pictures because it really was just so disheartening. Stacy.
I don't know what happened. I think.
Can you slide the progression for the video forward?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, too fast.
Okay. We're going to go really quick after this one.
All right, don't you worry about it.
So this was part of the stabilization process. It took almost 9 months. There was full scaffolding. We were grateful to the local school districts who we already partner with. We were able to get some additional space over at the grade school district. But it's challenging to work around the grade school activities. We use them already. Some of the other pictures you're going to see are of our. So can you hit pause there, Stacey?
Yep.
So this is some galvanized pipe that's rusting through. Underneath the bleachers that you're all sitting on is confined space. And all of these pipes run through concrete pads. They go through the concrete, come out, and they sit in water, sit out of water. And this is what they look like. I can put a pencil through some of them. Again, I don't even know what this project costs to renovate, but this is what is sitting under the bleachers, and it's just a matter of time before this is the drainage, I think, Ed, for all the toilet systems and stuff in the building. Yeah. So, okay, you can hit play. 1990. All right. We'll go back to the video.
Sorry.
The 1990s air conditioner. Again, you can look around, you can feel free to walk through the building. Some of you are regular users, but the building is starting to live its useful life. And the question is we don't have the money to renovate everything, and how much do we keep band-aiding because it's not a full renovation and it's not a full repair. We're gonna try one more time, Stacey?
Yep.
Let me click.
Yep.
So above the basketball court, we have a wood lintel, window lintel that was from when the school turned it over, and it seeps like that. We've tried just about everything to get it to stop. Again, the founder's room roof that's a $350,000 repair. That's a foam roof that's holding some water. All right.
I don't know why he keeps doing that. I'm not.
You get the point. So the board has really struggled with this because how much money and where do we start? And these are just our indoor buildings. Many of our parks are meeting that 25-year process. And because Frankfort grew so much and we got these great assets in our parks, the revenue is not there to keep them up. And the staff before us and our current staff, I think, are really good at maintaining what we can, but you can only do so much with so little. Those are some pictures of the bathroom. Literally, there's no more wood walls there. They've deteriorated. They've had to add pieces to it. Parking lot repairs was extensive alligator cracking. That's here, but it's in a number of our parking lots. This is the Penn building down the way. That's where our full-day preschool is. The roof, those ceiling tilers are glued to the underlaying of the roof. There's no sub roof, and they're starting to fall down. And if you put one down, they're all going to come down. There's no ADA access for the preschool program. All the landscaping on the front. All right, we're done with the video, but all the landscaping, so you get the picture. That'll be available online afterwards. So, again, giving you some questions, repeated that answer to that question. Why do other park districts have better facilities? So, Frankfort Park District in 2023 collected just under 2.2 million. The New Lenox Park District collects $4 million in revenue. Mokina Park District collects 3.7 million, and the Frankfort Square Park District collects $4.1 million. So yeah, I see some faces like, how is that possible? Their tax rate is higher. So I think if we go to, I think we already went past that slide. And again, this will be online. Their tax rate is 0.4% or 0.44.
0.63.
The graph chart. It's at the bottom. Oh, thanks. See, I forgot it. So theirs is 0.6396. So they're collecting way more money, so that's why they have a golf course. And I don't know that they serve as many residents as we do, and their property EAV isn't as high. So again, I'm not necessarily saying we can't do anything. I just want you to understand why we don't have what people are asking for. You're not paying for it. If you want a golf course, if you want a pool, if you want the Oaks or something comparable, the money has to come to the park district to do that. Again, it's the same comment I made, but the current level of funding doesn't meet the need to maintain our current assets. Do we look other places? Do we look for partnerships? Absolutely. We partner for programming, and we've been very successful at the grant level. We have had some great opportunities. We have received state money for DCOE grant to renovate the splash pad that was aging. We were able to get $400,000 for Lincoln Meadows, OSLAD for $170 for Windy Hill. And recently, we are in the process of replacing Fort Frankfort that was starting to fail. And we're getting $1.7 million to renovate that built park. And people would say, gosh, that seems like a lot of money. That's what a park costs. There are 2 pavilions. There's a lot of concrete work. The playground structures alone are $500,000. So I know people are like, well, that seems ridiculous. What are they building? $500,000 playground is what it costs to put in a playground the size of Fort Frankfort Park. I think the Village Park, that they just got a grant for Prairie Park. I think their playground there was, I think, $300,000 or $400,000. Things are expensive, and I think you know that as homeowners. I mentioned that we went in 2022, we had a referendum question, but most recently we spent the last year working with a survey company, working with Williams Architects to gather some information. So in 2024, we did a statistically valid survey. And what does that mean is we went through the process, we got the registered voter list, we sent it to a random sampling, and we asked questions. And we asked them, if we came to you and said, would you fund a $48 million bond referendum that would increase your taxes, would you support it? And 46% of the people who were polled said yes. Now, typically the people that we're polling are people who vote, because those are the people who are going to make that decision. And then the next question we asked, we said, if it was a $30 million bond, if we made it a smaller building, would you fund that? And the number went up. 58% of the people polled said yes. We also did the same survey that was available online, and we had very similar returns. The lower the money was, the more people supported it. But the people had an opportunity to fill in comments. The comments that we heard was, they'd like more information. What was next? A community center is long overdue. It's finally time to get this done. Must have an indoor pool. I can't tell you how many people want an indoor pool. It's bad timing, a tax increase on our taxes just went up. And then the last one was the community center is not needed, not sure that a facility would be used of this type. So these were the themes that continued to come, and these are the same things that we've heard year over year. And so it's right around 50%. As I said before, over the last 3 weeks since we posted this open house, we've heard from people who call and say, I don't want any new taxes. And I can very much appreciate that. And we've also heard from the same number of people that have said, put me on the list, how do I pass this to vote? So we wanted to educate people and tell you what our process is and what our situation is. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Frank and Andreas, who have took us through some other data we collected. We had a couple different experiences, so Frank's going to talk about that. And don't worry, we are going to get to the conceptual design and what it costs. So hang in there, it's coming.
Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. So my name is Frank Parisi. I'm the president of Williams Architects overall. So this is our specialty is parks and recreation. So a couple of things. Gene was kind of talking about process, and I want to drive that home a little bit. What we're going to share with you that Andres and I performed are basically public input sessions for some refinement with regard to that. So this is piggybacks the initial survey. So the reason we do this in a couple of reiterations is that we want to validate that the people that were polled were consistent with where the polling was actually happening. So we actually did stakeholder input and an open house with regards to those two. And what it does for us, it actually starts generating for us what we call a program. So a program for us means what amenities would the community like? Gina kind of alluded to the aquatics component, but we wanted to make sure we hit every other component as well. So the first thing that we did was a stakeholder group. I think there might be some people in the audience that met me about a year ago. Can I have show of hands? Perfect. Thank you for coming back again. And we had a series of questions. This was asked from every single group. So please describe affiliation with the park districts, overall, and what facilities you actually use. So various stakeholder groups came. We had coaches, associations. We had the governmental agencies, library staff, village staff, the park district staff, and actually the Lincoln Way Special Rec Association actually was a group that we actually interviewed. What kind of facilities do you currently use and how do you use them? Obviously, limited facilities in Frankfort. So Founders is actually extremely used, Commissioner's Park, and the recently completed Splash Park about 4 years ago as well. One of the things that we thought we would always ask is, of course, I always like to use the last word, small but mighty, is repeated over and over again. So what strength does the park district actually have in terms of facilities and programs? Sensitive to the community, affordable, creative programming with the limitations that they have, very accommodating. Like I said, small but mighty was actually the expression that we actually got continuously through all of those groups. What recreational programs, and now I'm getting into, if you notice, I start kind of really high level and start to dwell down into some of the particulars, okay? What recreational programs should be offered in a new rec center if developed from your perspective? Overall, these were the common themes that actually came through. They wanted to see some more adult programming, senior programming, opportunity for rentals, athletic programs, can be anything from basketball, volleyball, pickleball, soccer, group fitness exercise classes. Aquatics came up, not only for classes, but also water walking or learning to swim, dance and cheer, and one thing that came up was also sports training as well, with regards to that. So if you take that and you translate that into spaces, this is the actual next question that we asked. What rec spaces are most needed in the community recreation center? Which kind of resonates the programs that were in the previous slide. So it would be nice to see a gymnasium, some multi-use rooms, community rooms, an indoor running track or walking track, a fitness space, indoor turf came up, indoor aquatics, there it is again, and then dance and exercise studios overall. All right, so what do you think is the most critical element in getting a community center built in the community to make sure it gets addressed in the study? So this is actually the grouping of people. So location of the center was something that came up, and messaging, education of potential tax increases. That's why we're having this meeting today. So as part of that process that I talked about, overall generating the programming, we do have conceptual designs that we have Andreas walk through, but this is part of that process that we're looking for the input with you guys. And then we're actually looking, Gina will share some information on the impacts to the residents of Frankfort. Provide something for everything, have some community buy-in. I think we've already messaged that, and address what happens to this particular facility that we're all sitting in. What are the ideas about development of funding? Overall, Gina touched on a bunch of these. You can go to grants, a bond referendum, fees and revenue for services that are provided, some sort of sponsorships, rental opportunities, and even developing partnerships with other, not only agencies, but other private sector, a public partner, public-private partnership would actually be hospital or governmental agencies as well. And other questions, concerns, we always like to leave this open to everyone to provide their input. Any concerns that have, people raise the concern. People are moving out, activities are moving out of Frankfort because the facilities are not here. Comment that was made, be visionary and moving forward. Think of the future of the residents and the children of Frankfort. Any challenges, parking in this lot? Hopefully, I think we've probably maxed out the parking pretty easily, and then provide local opportunities actually for the construction aspect of it. So the next thing that we had done, this was about a year ago in April, I think it was Earth Day, if I'm mistaken. We did an open, I would call it a dotting exercise at our end. It's basically a series of boards which has different spaces on it. And if you can go to the next slide, Stacy, we have emerging themes. So everyone came in that participated at the Earth Day, and we gave them 3 dots. And each one of the dots actually went on a space. If they were most in space, and then an aquatics component. Okay, so with that being said, what it did for us architecturally is generated this program in which we're going to actually share the conceptions that generated from that. Okay, so what we tried to do is incorporated all the feedback we got from the survey, the stakeholder groups, the open houses, and wanted to come up with conceptual designs that basically embraced all of those details that we collected to date overall. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andreas.
Thank you, Frank. Andreas Sinides with Williams Architects. I'm associate principal with the firm. So we're just going to briefly go through the plans. What you see here and up on the boards are the various different options of the plans, but you'll be able to see them on the screen.
45 Laraway.
Real quick. So we have an option here. This is one option. So we have a site plan to kind of situate yourself on the site, and then 2 floor plans. We have another option located here on these 3 boards. And then I'm not going to point over there because of the people. There's a 3rd option and a 4th option, which we'll talk about as well here too. So option A. So option A is what we did to take all the various different components that you just heard Frank speak about and try to place them all within our new building. So that is essentially if we had the communities, all of their interests and goals in one building, this would be it. So this is that option A. So it is a large facility. It is, as indicated here, it's about 79,000 square feet. It's situated over 2 levels. So there's an upper level and a lower level. And we'll talk briefly about the site plan here. So this is located on Laraway and LaGrange, part of property that the Park District currently owns. You may be familiar with it. The site itself has a high point towards the corner of up here or on the south area right here, and then a low point where the retention pond is currently located. We took the opportunity to take that building and situate it in that location because on the front end that faces the roads, you'll get a nice 2-story level building that you can see from the street, which is going to create a really nice impression. That's not to say the backside won't, but that'll be a benefit to the front side because of just how it situates itself on site. That naturally allowed for the parking. We have a lot of parking that's necessary for a building of this size to be located on the backside, but on the front as you enter the facility from the road here and enter. The 2 entry points, one of them is located right here. The other one is located right here. This one is the main entry to the building, and this one is for preschool. That's a security thing and just keeping those 2 programs separate so that they can operate at the same time and not be a security concern. Some important features to consider on the site too is just kind of situating it so that you can get to the site, whether it's walking, biking, from cars, all of that's kind of taken into account for this plan. So now we'll move into the upper level. So on the upper level plan, that top arrow, which is located right here, allows you to come in and you are immediately greeted by the front desk. And then there's offices on the upper level. So this is the upper level, and then a lot of the fitness components And what you'll see is an aquatic component actually happens on the lower level. So on this upper level, you come in, and there's also immediately on the upper level, the walking track or running track, which is on the high level of the gym. Over here on this side is also the preschool, which I mentioned is located on a different corridor and a different access point so that it stays secure and separate from the remainder of the facility. We can move to the lower level. So from the lower level, you are able to see where most of the fitness components are located. And that includes the gymnasium, which is this orange box right here. So as you're coming down, that's over on your right. And then immediately in that central area is the interactive play area. That's, in short, it's an an indoor playground for children to be able to play with. On the site, looking out, as I was mentioning, towards LaGrange and Laraway, is a multi-purpose area. These suites of classrooms can actually open up, and it can be one large space, or it can be multiple smaller spaces. So it provides some flexibility for programs for the Park District. Then on the Laraway side here are all of the fitness components. So it's some fitness classrooms like group X, dance, and so on and so forth in these areas here. And then on the far north end here is the aquatics component. So the aquatics component is included in this plan. This is the option A plan. And it includes both a splash pad area and a 3-lane lap pool. So that's the main component of the facility on the option A. As mentioned, that's the one that incorporates all of the various different aspects that the community was interested in having in one facility, all wrapped into one. So that's option A. Now we're going to move to option B. And we're going to go by a little bit faster here because simply option B is very, very similar. That option simply takes everything that's in option A, but the only thing that's not included is an aquatics component. The aquatics component, if you recall in the plan, is situated in this area. It is removed in an effort to keep the cost of the facility down. It is a facility aspect that was that had high interest by the community, but it is also one of the more expensive components when it comes to building and operating as well too. So in this particular scheme, this option removes the aquatics. And you can see in the overall square footage, it goes down by about 10,000 square feet. So what was previously 79,000 is now 69,000. So just moving into the next slide to see the floor plan. On the upper level, it doesn't change too much. It stays pretty much the same. But then if we go to the lower level, that blue plate that was originally there is now shown as future building expansion or aquatics expansion. So that would be an opportunity to come back in at a later time to consider putting in something, whether it's aquatics or something else otherwise. So this is option B that we're going to be looking at for the facility. The next option is actually hitting much closer to home in this location. So there's two things going on in option C. There's renovations that's going to be happening here, and then there's renovations that's going to be happening at the Flint building, which is the preschool component. So this option is obviously a much smaller facility, 34,000 square feet, but the goal is that we're coming in and we're renovating this facility and trying to bring it up to a level that will allow the community to have the various different program functions that they're looking for. Not to the extent of A or B, but to do what we can with the facility that is located here. So if we go to the next slide, it's briefly just going to show, I won't get into it too much, I'll talk about some very brief things, but we're coloring in all of the plan here to basically indicate that we're touching all the spaces. So we're touching the gym, we're touching the classrooms, or the program rooms, we're touching the fitness rooms, all of it included in that space. On the second level, there are just some minor renovations and changes that will be happening. Actually, in this space right here in the gym, you can see these two colored areas are areas that actually don't exist right now. They would be spaces that we brought out so that more program space can happen, essentially where the bleachers are located up on the upper level. So that's option C for this facility. And then for the Point facility, very much the same. The idea would be to upgrade that facility, bring it to code, but also provide the finishes, the fixtures necessary to bring it up, modernize it. Just some points that we have here. It's a complete building remodel, accessibility compliance, and enhanced safety and security because of just the program type that it is, which is a preschool. So those are the three options that we have with respect to the buildings, if we were to be able to renovate the buildings for the park district. Next slide. So when it comes to investment, how do we want to do this?
I'm sure everyone's waiting for this magic question. All right, so Gina and I were going to share on this, okay? So the way we actually do cost opinions at our end, basically we have a cost opinion for each one of these options. And then the one option that we do not show is option D. I want you to keep this in mind because at the end of this, we're going to ask for some participation. Okay, we're going to ask for a voting exercise. And which one of these options you would be most likely to vote for if it came up. And that's the feedback we're going to get here from the group, okay? So if we can go to option A. So option A, including the entire site development. So when I describe a $62 million investment, I just heard the sigh in the room. Who is up? Okay. But we want to be straight. We want to be forthright, right? This is what the community asked us to put together.
62 million.
What the value would actually be in $62 million. Now, $62 million is assuming some escalation costs and the way the market is going right now, right? I'm not going to tell you $2025 because we're not building this in 2025. So that escalation is included in there, including all the site development, permit costs, consultant fees. I call it all in one bundle. So that's a $62.2 million ask on their way with regards to that. We go to option B, and of course, Andreas kind of alluded to this. We wanted to see what the value was for that aquatics component, and if we took that out. Now, mind you, this is and we wanted to do this cognitively because in the survey that was asked, 36%, I think, or 38% said they were okay with a $48 million solution. They were okay with that. So we wanted to show that. And we took the aquatic component out, knowing that it's about worth $12 million. So an option B is actually a $49.5 million ask with regards to overall. So that's taking up, of course, the rest of the development stays the same, but this is a $49.5 million ask without doing the aquatics component and allowing the aquatics component for future planning. So the space is still there for future generations to come in if they wanted to include that as well. So then option C actually starts combining the renovation of the Founders Center along with Quent together overall. That is a $25 million ask. And when we talk about coming to this facility, Andres alluded to it, it's basically reimagining all the spaces in here. From a renovation, taking care of structural issues, plumbing issues, just bringing this all up to speed. Now, if you know that what he mentioned before, it doesn't accomplish everything that the community asked, but it does have an asset that can be used overall. Which leads us to the next slide for what is the impact on the taxpayer overall for each one of these options. And I'll turn that over to.
So these dollars are real things, and they impact, the idea that they would impact everyone is very real. And I want to go back to what people would say, well, why would you be asking to build something that you don't even have enough money to maintain what you have now? So I'd like to answer that question, that if we were to build and if the residents said they wanted to support option A, we would also need more operating money. So it wouldn't just be $63 million, it would be $63 million and a $2 million operating, because pools are very expensive to operate and they don't typically cover themselves from an operating cost. So for that whole project all in, the $63 million with a $2 million tax rate increase would have an impact annually per $100,000 of $155. Well, what does that mean? So if your house is worth $500,000, the annual increase on your property taxes would be $775. That's huge. I don't know that that sounds like a really lot of money. You all just got your tax bills and they went up. That's $65 a month. That's a lot of money. Option B states, I can barely see that, sorry, but my long range distance is bad. So no aquatics. So that's a $47 million building, but we still need money to operate and we still need money to improve our parks and things of that nature. So it's a $1.5 million tax rate. It's a little better. It's $579 a year if you have a $500,000 home, $48.25 per month. So under $50 a month, you get a brand new facility over at LaGrange and Laraway, potentially. That's just a potentially drafted location. $50 a month, $579 per year. Still a very big ask. Option C, $25 million to renovate this space. And again, for some of you would know, we're mowing parks every other week. We have cut back on some of our operational costs. So we would like to have that $1 million, not just to maintain the new buildings that we're going to renovate or the buildings we're going to renovate, but to continue to maintain our parks and the assets we have. So $25 million and $1 million operating is $336 a year or $28 a month. A trip through a drive-through. If you have two people, you go to McDonald's or Portillo's, but Portillo's might be $36, but $28 a month, you can have the renovation here to these facilities. Option D, there's a typo on this page on mine. I don't know if there's one on that, but option D is no construction bond. So no referendum bond, but a tax rate increase that would give the park district $1 million more annually to invest into the facilities we have, to buy new pickup trucks, to replace the playgrounds, to tick away at these projects that are aging. So $1 million more to give us, so we, instead of having $2.3 million a year, we'd have $3.2 million a year is $138 a year, $12 a month. So maybe a coffee drive-through, not a lunch drive-through. Coffee's expensive at Starbucks these days. So those are the costs of these projects. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that people would ask. So if you built A or B, what would happen to this building and the Pent building? We would sell them. They would likely be bought. The Pent building would likely maybe be returned to green space and utilized as part of the main park. This building here would likely be sold. We've had buyers come to us over the years, but when they've come in the building and they've seen the condition, nobody's been interested. So I suspect that it would be purchased and made into wonderful homes because everybody wants to live here in downtown Frankfort. Let's see, a couple other questions. I know there are people who probably live in Heritage Knolls. I know that when this happened in 2014, 2016, there were people who supported the project and there's people who don't want the project. The current plans have been drafted with that property in mind, but that's not to say that it has to go there. The village's master plan, actually, when they did their plan recently, I think 3 or 4 years ago, the village's plan looks to incorporate and develop Route 30 from Mariano's east with a recreation community center there. Some challenges, we don't own any land there, but hypothetically, these plans have been drawn for that property there on LaGrange and Laraway, but it's not to say that's where it has to go. Frank, what have I missed so far? Okay, so I guess I'd like to take, I have one more slide. What's my next slide? What happens if we don't pass a referendum or any of these referendums? Well, I might get fired. Actually closer to retirement. So I guess it'll be disenchanting, and we do a pretty good job here at the Park District with what we have. I'd like to echo what came from our focus group, but we're small but mighty. But we will continue to have to try to just figure out which fire we put out first. It's challenging. Our staff said today, I said, I don't want this for me. We want this for the community of Frankfort. We want to be able to maintain the assets we have and provide quality recreation services. So choices will be made. In talking to people the last couple of weeks, someone said, just sell the parks. No one ever uses Butternut Park, just sell it. Well, that person may feel that way, but I'm not sure that all the residents would. Parks have been known to increase property values. People move to communities because of great schools and parks and amenities, and I would hate to see them be less than what they are today. So we've started mowing our parks every other week just to help reduce our costs so that we can put money in other places. And I think one thing to be said that I don't know that we said out loud, but when we did this exercise in 2014, 2016 timeframe, the building that was proposed for Laraway cost $22 million. So COVID happened. You guys are all paying it yourself. Inflation is escalating. If this doesn't happen now in some form, whether it be A through B, this will be way more expensive the next time. So that, I mean, the big building is expensive, but that $20 million building with no changes to it, just as it was proposed in 2016, is $38 million. That building, the reason we didn't bring you back the building from 2016 is it didn't replace this building. The building that was drafted in 2016 was more athletics. The building that's proposed in option B, provides everything that's here. Classroom space, and the classroom space is used for programs, but it's used for so much more. We have seniors that use the rooms upstairs that come in and play mahjong. They come in and play bridge. We have Girl Scouts and Boy Scout groups here. The Frankfort girls softball, boys baseball, Falcons football, they hold their meetings here. We hold HOA meetings for free. The space that we provide is community space. It's for the residents, for the people in the room. You may not use it, but it is not for us. It is not for the staff that works here. It's for the community. And so potentially what these places, any of these renovation does is provide more community space and a gathering space for people to come together. We want to have a poll, and so you're going to be posed with the option to, would you support A, B, C, D, or E, which is none of the above? What would you support from a tax rate increase? So I think it would probably be best, Stacy, does one of these slides, go one more. This is the polling QR code. So Regina has some sheets. There's a couple options. If you don't have a smartphone and can't scan the QR code, we will give you a paper sheet and you can cast a choice that way. I'm going to read them one more time. Frank, can you give me the yellow sheet there? And we'll post these here. This information is going to be online. So if you're at home, you can scan the QR code and participate in the poll. But option A, for a $500,000 home, is a $775 annual tax rate increase. Option B, no aquatics, $579, $48 a month. Option C is $336 a year, $26 a month. Option D, which is no new building, just more operating money to fix what we have, is $138 a month, or $138 a year, $12 a month. And then choice E is none of the above. And
Seaweed says go for the custom.
this is live. This is anybody who's at home or anybody in the room.
No? Why?
I'm gonna say, where's option D and E? So we were hoping to have this on both screens. I don't know if those who are at home because of our non-IT capabilities, but people are still voting. But again, option A is the all-in at $776 annually. Option B, no aquatics. Option C, renovate the Pent and the Founder Center. Option D is just a tax rate, and option E is none of the above. Okay, hold on. We've got some tech issues. Regina, where are the sheets? You've got some in your paper. Hold on. There is a sheet with the QR code. Callie, the big sheets in her basket. They're gone. So if you need to take a paper poll, Andreas is checking to see why the voting is closed. We'll fix that. No. So the question was asked, if people can scan that QR code. Someone just asked if we ever incorporated an outdoor pool. We need to replace what we have. So to think outside to have an outdoor pool isn't really been in our wheelhouse, because we need to replace what we have. Because to go build what we don't have, what we have is falling apart. So no, we did not look at that. Yeah, we'll do Q&A in just a second. Once everyone has an opportunity to poll, we will ask questions. We want to make sure that we are able to share them with people at home. Okay, sure. Well, you can wait on your polling if you want. But there is one. Andrea, are we working on getting the poll back up in order? So yeah. While they're working on the polling, I will take questions. So if you have a question, if you can stand up and raise your hand just so that I can repeat it, and then we can make it on time. So there's a lady here in the jean shirt, if you can stand up so I can hear you. So Lincoln Way North. Why did we use Lincoln Way North? Frankfort Square Park District has an intergovernmental agreement with District 210. You can use Lincoln Way North right now. The pool is full of water and the school district doesn't allow anybody to swim in it. We've asked the high school district The pool is not open for business. And that building there does not give us what we have here. So the high school district isn't going to allow anyone to use the building for the classroom space. That is a high school district issue. And from what I've heard from other residents is people don't want to travel all the way to north if you live on the west side. Can everyone be quiet so we can just hear some of the questions? So the question is Heritage Knolls, where is it going out? Laraway Road is going to be expanded by the county to 4 lanes. So Regency Drive will be the entrance in, and when they renovate Laraway, or excuse me, when they renovate Laraway, it will be, Regency will be a right in and right out. The next entrance into Heritage Knolls is going to get a street light. So there will be a light at, is that Heritage Drive, Tom? Heritage Drive will actually have a stoplight. If this were to move forward, and again, this is just conceptual, if it was to move forward, the hope would be we've had some very high level questions with the nursery, would be able to get some more of the piece of the pie and maybe have an entrance in and out of the break. Was there other questions?
Yes.
In the piece?
He was trying to figure it out. We're not.
Louder,
sure
please, sorry.
Andreas was trying to play.
I don't know, I don't work for the high school district, but I don't believe so. Your tax.
So we're not able to say.
Approved for the high school years ago, that 25-year bond. Jim Holland, I know you're in the room, I saw you. Is that, what year did they issue that bond, do you know?
Okay.
Oh, there's Adam, thank you. 2032 is approximately when it will be paid for. Manhattan, New Lenox, everybody who's in District 210, it's part of your tax bill. Yes.
So why would be the incentive for people to have really, that's such a big issue.
The feedback we heard was people wanted it for learn to swim and fitness. So a 3-lane pool would do swim lessons, aqua aerobics, water therapy. It would not be for a swim team, but that wasn't the feedback we heard through the survey. So it would do, the 3-lane pool could do all of those things. So, yes. The question was when we did our stakeholder meetings with Williams, how many people was that? It varied. We went to random samplings. We invited residents, we invited preschool residents, we invited seniors. So they were small, like if we had preschool parents, we may have invited 30 and we may have had 5 to 6 show up. It just depends. So again.
So you're talking about all this information, the small number of people.
In part, the statistical data that we got, I see your hand, Tom. In the statistical data that we collected, it's all threefold. So it was through the statistical survey, through the stakeholders. There was an online survey that wasn't a statistical survey, and then as well as the dotting exercises at our special event. So, yes. Yeah, again, this is just the entry level aspect of it, but this same information that we're sharing was the same statistical information that was in 2014 and 2016, what people wanted. Tom, you had a question back there?
Yeah, I have a question about, so, I feel like the one option we have, if I was happy to vote for A, but I knew that wasn't going to go through, I would say, oh, I also had. You had a yes and no. That's one that after. A, B, C, D.
So yeah, I hear your feedback. So if the question was, well, shouldn't I be able to support A, B, C, and D? I guess it would say it's kind of implied. I guess if you're willing to fund something at that level, you would likely or might likely vote for some of the other ones. But again, this is just a process of where we're headed. So, gentleman in the white shirt on the bleachers.
Yes, my name is David Terrell. I'm a Republican precinct captain for District 11 here in Frankfort. I represent about 1,000 people. The big problem that we all have is you're forcing all the senior citizens out of this community. They're not moving out because of the facilities. They're moving out because of the high taxes. They can't afford it anymore. Two solutions, okay? raise the impact fees on all this new building that's going in. All right, get your money that way, or B, for every dollar that you take out of 157C or out of the high school, we'll give you 50 cents of it.
Okay, I want, for those at home, maybe didn't hear that, we had a resident who represents 1,000 Republicans, precinct captain.
1,000 residents.
1,000 residents.
They're
Okay.
Republicans.
Sorry.
1,000 residents.
His suggestion is, again, echoing that taxes are high and that people are being outpriced out of their homes, particularly seniors. Two options to go forward was to raise impact fees here in the community. The Park District doesn't have the ability to do that. That would be at the village level. And then I'm going to summarize, if the school districts took less of the pie, you'd support something, or they should give it to the Park District. So I would suggest that you attend a school district meeting to share that with them. The little lady over here.
Yes, I got two questions. Kind of like collective. Okay, so I live in Lincoln Estates, which I would be supporting the Frankfort Square Park District program. So would I be able to use this being out of district, and are you going to be charging out of district yearly or monthly amount for the facility if it was chosen?
Sure. So the question is can this individual attending is not a resident and wouldn't get to vote on this issue? And would they be able to use the facility? So there will be user fees. I anticipate if we build A or B, the walking track would be available to residents for free. Non-residents would be able to pay a nominal fee to use the walking. The building includes a small health fitness club, and it's small. But the user fees, there'd be resident user fees, and non-residents fees would be, we're not at that point yet, but there would be non-resident fees, and non-residents would be welcome. And that's what usually makes these facilities possible, are the extra pieces that come from outside that help fund it. So, on the bleachers, the gentleman in the sweatshirt.
Yes, does the preschool carry itself in terms of doing this, or should that be private?
Sure. Does the preschool make money? Is that the question? So, yeah, so the preschool does cover its own operating costs and the salary of the staff of the person who runs it. Our preschool is typically full. It's 5 days a week. We have 3 big money makers here in the rec program that carry pretty much everything else. It's our after school program, our preschool program, and day camp. And then it's just sheer volume. The more people you have a break even, the more people you get in there, and it covers itself. So from photocopiers that we operate down there to the electric bills, it's all charged back to the program and it covers its cost. So I think there would be a void to fill if we did not offer preschool. On the top bleachers, gentleman with the gray hoodie in the phone. Yep.
Hi. Two questions. First one's real quick. Can the deck that you're going through email to the website?
I'm sorry, the slide deck, yes.
You'll email
It'll be on the website, but we can email it to you. It'll take us some time to enter all the emails, but in a day or so, the slide deck will be available on our website.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And the second question, I have a lot more questions, but I'll just give you one now. Other than Mojito, who are you benchmarking against? Like, does New Lenox have a facility? Does Manhattan have a facility?
So we look locally and then even regionally. So, and there's a lot of things we kind of look at is when we're looking at the median household income and what people here in Frankfort want, comparing them to other agencies. So Mokina has the Oaks. They have a bond issue. They went to referendum to build that facility. New Lenox doesn't have a facility. Manhattan doesn't have a facility. Tinley Park has great facilities. That's the Benton Housing Center. The village of New Lenox is building a outdoor athletic complex, but that's not the Park District. Homewood Flossmoor, I would say, I don't know if we're benchmarking by them, but they were one of the park districts that we use for the rate comparison. So I think that, we're looking locally, but then we look regionally to say, like, what's it comparable to Frankfort and what would residents' expectations be? And quite honestly, really, we don't compare. We may look at them because we really are just here to serve. Our priority is our residents. So another question. Yes, ma'am.
The Oaks doesn't have a pool, does it?
No pool at the Oaks. The closest indoor pool would be the Tinley Park District Fitness Center has a small lap pool. Indoor pools are hard to come by because they're costly and they don't make money. Bolingbrook Park District has Pelican Harbor. Theirs is actually really nice. It has indoor and outdoor right in the same place. But indoor pools, I think the HF Racquetball Club has a pool. There's a couple of private health clubs like Lifetime in Orland Park, but indoor pools are, they eat money. Very expensive to operate. Yes, sir. Hold on, this gentleman, I'll be right with you.
Is the Frankfort growing, or is it, as this gentleman said, we're losing population, maybe because of how impression that the community is actually growing?
The question is the community growing? Again, I'm not a statistician. Thank you. But I would tell you it's growing. And why I can tell you it's growing is the Park District, every government entity in the village proper, we get a developer contributions when new homes are built. So Crystal Brook, the subdivision that's out that I mentioned, we're gonna get a new park. It's booming out there. I believe Heritage Knolls, actually all those houses at the north end have built out in the last couple of years. So there's a lot of subdivisions that are existing that are getting growth. And then, I think they're just any of those last pieces. And Frankfort isn't landlocked. I think that's one of the unique things that we have here in Frankfort is that there's a lot of opportunity for the community to continue to grow south. The gentleman in the blue hoodie.
In the event that this building was sold or torn down and the land was sold, where would that money go?
Oh, it would be infused into the operating and to improve what we have. Yeah, I mean, we haven't been able to get a clear-cut value on this property, but I estimate it's probably between 1 and 1.5. The building's got to be torn down, and it's a pretty expensive process. Up on the bleachers.
Is there ever an opportunity to rearrange our tax levy?
Tom Reedy, this is your moment. So Tom, we don't have that ability. You as voters do. So.
You want to take that question?
The question was, is there an opportunity to rearrange how your property taxes are allocated amongst the different governmental entities? Is that correct? So that's the Frankfort Park District can only control its own levy, and they're under property tax caps, or the PTEL, which Gina referred to earlier in the presentation, meaning the district can only control its own levy. And then each other overlapping governmental entity also is only able to control its own levy. So the village, grade school district, high school district, Will County, the Forest Preserve, they are all entities that are accounted for in your property tax. I have never had that question posed, but just on its face, each district, each entity is in control of its own property tax levy. So there's no mechanism to say I'd rather pay more to the park district and less to the school district, etc.
Sorry, excuse me. Isn't that option D then?
I'm sorry, what isn't that option D?
What he's talking about, to increase the tax levy that you guys have for the park district. That's option D, as far as I saw it.
Option D gives the question was, isn't that option D? Option D gives us more money, but doesn't give anybody any less. So you would be.
I'm not saying take it away from anyone else. You're saying that you can't change it.
Right, but I think the question up top was, could we lower people's taxes? And I think as the other gentleman alluded. Yeah, so we would get more money in option D, yes, and it would give us more money to, not take as long or let things get any worse, but it doesn't take any way less. There has been the question several times about the school district, and I have shared with the superintendent of the school district, I said, it's a continued question we get. The grade school district, for those, they built a beautiful building, they renovated Grand Prairie, right, Chelsea. I never get that right. I want them to be flipped, sorry. They just renovated Chelsea, and they had $48 million in the bank to do so, so they did not have to come and ask you. I don't have $48 million in the bank. Collecting $2 million per year, I would have to save everything I collect for about 20 years, 30 years to build anything of that case. The gentleman in the black shirt on the bleachers?
Yeah, it's a two-part question. So are there tax increases available underneath the PTEL limit that we're not taking advantage of?
The question is there tax increases that the park district isn't taking advantage of? We levy your full levy, and actually we ask for more, because every year when we go to do our tax levy here at the park district, if we go over 5%, we have to do a notice in the paper and do a truth in taxation, and we do that because what happens, because Frankfurt is continuing to grow, every year there's new properties. So like the Borg Warner property that's going to be redeveloped, all of those tax block properties are going to be separated into pins, and every time they come onto the tax levy as new parcels, you have an opportunity, kind of a one-time grab. I know it's the most confusing process, but when there's new property redeveloped or rezoned or re-rated, you get a one-time grab. So we are always trying to capture the most of the tax levy from any new development. So we try to do that every year. And you had a second part to that question?
So are we looking at an effective rate? I'm trying to understand.
Yep, so we would be.
How the taxes stay flat if we're taking advantage of 5% or whatever it is every year.
You want to explain EAB and the tax?
So under PTEL or under tax caps, you can increase, assuming there's no new growth, the district can increase its tax levy by the lesser of 5% or CPI in a given year. So the district has been taking advantage of those increases, but given the small amount of their overall levy, those increases each year are fairly small. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
And the white shirt next to the gentleman.
Can the voters in Frankfurt create a referendum to change percentages of where our tax money goes?
No, that's not allowed for under statute.
Cat, the gentleman in the blue shirt on the bleachers.
Question as far as the site.
Yes, we tried in 2020 for Borg Warner.
So yeah, I mean, it's like concept of building my short. Not really all that conducive.
Well, it's just under 12 acres there over at Heritage Knolls, talking about that location. It's not a bad site for A or B. Any bigger and it would need to be a larger parcel. Most of the parcels that the park district currently owns are pretty tight. Commissioners Park has a little bit of room on it, but a lot of it's floodplain. So some of the larger parcels that we own currently. I wasn't here in 2014, but they spent an extensive amount of time trying to find a parcel that was centrally located, affordable, and kind of checked all those boxes. And the property that Grady and Laraway did that. I have a dream, and my dream was really, we call it the Boy Scout property here on Nebraska that backs up to Old Plank Trail. It's also kind of not as deep as we would like, but I think to me that says it's connectivity to Old Plank Trail. I think that has some merit. And then again, the village's master plan talks about developing the Route 30 corridor in Pfeiffer. So those are some other things. But again, when you go to do a design, you have to pick some property. So this is a parcel that we own, and that's kind of been the type where we've been looking. So I know there's other questions. I want to just give people who haven't asked a question a chance.
What type of grants like that can we explore to try to offset some aging area of concern?
So the question is what kind of grants have we looked at? So we have looked at anything that most of the funding that's available comes through the state, the federal level comes through the state. They've only been available twice in my lifetime. There's something called the park grant that the state funds, and we actually applied for it to try to renovate part of this building. And gosh, I feel like all we did is ask, was that 2020? That one has a great grant because it's not necessarily a full 50-50 match. So it was we were asking the state for 2.5 million. The unfortunate part is that one of the big asks on a lot of these grant opportunities is the need of the community. And Frankfurt doesn't check that box. Our average median household income isn't going to get us to the top of that pile. So you had another question here? Well, it's not the village developing. The village has a master plan. And in that master plan, again, talking to all the residents and garnering feedback, is if you have to look at the village's master plan, but there's a whole corridor of development with mixed use. And one of the things that sits there is people have they've plugged in a blank spot for recreational needs. It could be private, it could be public, but that is kind of the corridor that the village had kind of said it would be a nice location for. So, other lady, the lady on the bleachers? So the question was about the Heritage Knolls property and the in and out of the subdivision. So the goal with this development, Regency would be the in and out use for that facility. As I mentioned on the map, there's a triangle, there's a tree nursery there. We've had a very preliminary, hey, would you be interested if we ever got any further to sell portions of that to have an exit so that we could exit onto Laraway? They're open to the idea, but we're not close to that because we don't have any money to buy that. I will tell you that if we don't build this there, like let's say option D is what the community comes to and supports, we have been open to selling this parcel and we get phone calls regularly for people who want to purchase it. Public storage, gas stations are the two top uses of people who want to buy that corner. My decision what it's used for, it has to go through the village, but we get calls regularly on the sign with the phone number, and they call and ask to buy what it's zoned for, and it's zoned for commercial use. So I don't get to decide if we sell it what it's used for, but we also get calls of people looking to develop that public storage. I don't know why, I don't know what people want to store, but the lady over here with the shoulder. Good question, timeline. So, you only get to go to referendum or to the voters when there's an election. So in 2026, we have 2 elections. You have the governor primary in the spring, and then the governor election in the fall, which is November. So our target has been November if anything moves forward. Again, this is a process. And so just like when we did this in 2014 and 2016, if we get to a point where there's no support to move this forward, it may never go to an election. But we've been looking at November of 2026. And there's a lot of moving pieces. Is anybody else going to ask you for more money? And we talked to all those other community groups to kind of see where we go and if we have a shot, again, so we're starting this process to see where we go from there. So up here, the lady in the blue.
Yeah. I couldn't. To me, it makes more sense to do it on Route 4 because it's a multi-lane highway.
Good question. So the question is how, have we looked at traffic studies? And I have gone in and out of that community. And I do realize that everybody is dealing with the recent heightened use of the Patriot Center and what that's done to the subdivision. I will let Frank talk a little bit maybe about traffic and what the positive or negative impact on property values are if there was a development on that site.
Yeah. So obviously we're at the inception, right? So I'm just gonna give you a hypothetical. If we wouldn't go forward, right, we have an entire process that has to go by the village. And the village will require a traffic study at that intersection exactly as part of their requirements. So if we move in that direction, they would show you what independently from our team, right? Because it could be perceived that there's a bias here, right, overall. But they will conduct a traffic study and will show you exactly what the impact of traffic is there. And we'll take into consideration, I think the young lady that said the 2 entrances in and out, they would take that into consideration, as well as the traffic along Laraway and the bridge.
It would be that development.
If the property was sold, would we have to do a traffic study? That would be up to the next developer. That would be their challenge when they go to develop the site. That would all be, the buyer would have to take that through the village. The second part of that question was property value impact when you have a facility of this nature. Frank, do you want to tackle that a little bit? Or?
I mean, I could talk, I mean, every community is gonna be a little bit different, overall, but considering our expertise is in that particular arena, right? We have been in other communities in which we have recreation centers. I'm gonna use the word like the city of Chicago. If you look at the city of Chicago, they have neighborhoods and they have a community center in each one of those neighborhoods. Andreas coincidentally and I, he lives in Arlington Heights, which is a northern suburb. They have 5 recreation centers there. They're all embedded in a neighborhood, and all the properties around there have not lost value with regards to that. I mean, that's from our personal experience working in the park and rec world.
And no one's being dismissive that there would, Heritage Knolls residents would be impacted immediately more than other folks. So, the lady here in red.
And you showed us what we do that. I what else with that and how, what are we actually getting?
Yes. So,
Coming in from a different direction.
Sure.
Instead of what the community wants. What is my $775 versus living in that say where
so the question is how do you, can you tell me if I lived in Tinley and I paid 900 and what they're doing with their 900 versus if you have 900 here and what you would get for the 900? Very complicated because every community, 900, Tinley Park, I think is 60,000 people these days. So 900 times 60,000 people versus 900 times 20,000 people is, so that's
not
a,
necessarily dollar amount. Like that 990 and would cost more, you know, we get a 3-lane pool, right? So for $775, right? So what do you get?
an ice rink, 18 holes of golf, an in-ground pool, a health and racquetball club.
Right, that's.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. I don't have that answer tonight, but that is a very complicated, I mean, because every community is different and every home value is different, but I hear what you're saying. So, yeah.
Because it's like visual.
Yeah, okay.
Something that goes on to the ballot in November next year. You have an expectation, and it happens. You have an expectation that the grant would be the best possible case for me running in that.
3 years, Frank? About 2.5? 2.5 years from an election gets a building built and operational. No pandemics, no other crisis, but 2.5 type thing. So, yeah. Which one? Hold on, I got someone else that they said is, I don't know who you're talking about. Oh, sorry, I have a black sweater, I don't see the red gloves, so, sorry. On the top of the bleachers.
What were you thinking, putting this pretty big thing in there? You're gonna be able to take right out of it, onto Larry. And if you wanna go left, you're gonna go to someone's street, Ashford. Go to Heritage, take a left or right at the now stoplight. You are gonna go this way, so you're directly like basically grade from one of these.
So there's potentially increased traffic in the residential streets in Heritage Knolls.
Yeah, I mean, that light was supposed to be there a while ago, it should have been there. But the Patriot Center or whatever was the accident, you need to go back and see it. Airway is also now being from 57 to 80. The trucks don't want to be with the night. Trying to get out of our side. Accident. I can't see the cops. We're the traffic director, and that includes centers. We have no other way of getting out of there. This big thing with this parking and the classes and everything. But this is not feasible, is what you guys want, it may be what the community wants. Down there, yes, you're, that's all. You're often determined. No one's gonna be able to get around. I mean, I don't know about all of this. Well, I mean, adults.
Shut up.
I can't imagine your process. Literally, that's gonna happen in that small.
So the feedback for those at home, there's concern about the traffic, the interruption of traffic during the Laraway expansion, the increase in traffic that would be inherited, not possibly. All of that is valid feedback. Again, this is still high level. This is still very discoverable. And so all of that feedback is very valuable. Again, our goal would also to be potentially to try to get an exit onto LaGrange, which potentially could be valuable for the whole subdivision to have that access. May not lessen all of it, but it certainly would be an option. The gentleman in the sweatshirt.
You guys own the land around the Patriot Center?
No, the Patriot Center is where their parking lot is, and then they own the lot that is directly east of their building.
Could you buy that?
They asked me if they wanted to buy it. I don't have any money.
It would be less expensive.
So potentially that could be an add-on. It would be an opportunity for parking, maybe a way to. I don't know what they're doing there. I think they don't know what they're doing, but that's just my take on it. So. And we have been working with the Will County, the Department of Transportation, in trying to make sure that if we were to move forward, how the projects could go together, the Laraway expansion and our project, if we ever got to that point. We have talked to the Patriot Center to try to find out what they're doing, and I think it's kind of changing. It's kind of, they're on an ebb and flow. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so can you work with that Frankfort Park District and you utilize the school?
We don't
try to work with you?
We have sat down with the school district, 210, who owns the building, to try to get access to the pool for all the residents of Lincoln Way, everyone who's paying for it. So from Manhattan to New Lenox, we've met with the school district and they said they can't figure out how we could get everybody to use that pool. Right now, to use Lincoln Way North, we don't need to do anything different. You can use it now and pay the fee. There's the Frankfort Square Park District is paying Lincoln Way District 210 an annual fee to offer that use to anybody in the Lincoln Way that's paying for it. So the problem is I don't, well, because it's not a rec center, it's a high school.
I understand it.
And it's not a recreational based pool, and now the pool, because it's been sitting in the condition it is, needs major repairs as well. Yes, sir.
I just thought it's a situation, you guys get the votes before, and we're on here today, about the Cadillac development. Is there a chance that the village then does not approve?
Well, I guess there's always that potential, but we would be, if before it would get to a vote, there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, this is just a.
You're saying right now you're put on next year's ballot.
Potentially.
Potentially, now you have the structure, you have the mechanism now to collect more tax money from all of us in the room. There's also that chance that the village says no.
Okay, so if you go to referendum to build option A or B, you can only build option A or option B. If a village, for whatever reason, didn't approve it, or let's say the state or other government entity, we couldn't use that money for anything else. You would get your money back. There would be no collection. You only get to get money to do what you say you're going to do. Yeah, we would not be able to borrow the money. You can't borrow money to not do what you're not supposed to do. You're still paying for it, unfortunately. We would never have issued the bonds. So if we aren't able to move forward with the project, the entity that lends you the money, you have to show in good faith that you're doing what you say you would do. So if we don't have the process to move forward, they wouldn't issue the bonds to us. Yes, ma'am. Sure, not tonight. So the question was, is there another, could there be another option? And there can be lots of options. There might be a blend of all of these. So this is a gauge at this time to kind of see where we're at and what people are feeling. And I would say really particularly kind of really from a tax impact. So this is the big cost. This is how much it costs. Is there even an appetite for that? And so if there's an appetite for A, maybe the location doesn't matter at all. We'd have to look a little bit harder. And certainly, so like, let's say tonight, if A or B were in the top rated one, I think one of the first things we would be doing is we would be looking to have a meeting with Heritage Knowles residents to kind of finite some of their concerns, but we're not even there yet. So, but I think, yes, I mean, you know, everything is kind of on the table. The lady in the top row of the bleachers?
Like you guys are gonna change your levy, we talk to the other groups. So have they ever talked to the heads of the people and seen if anybody was functioning without a percentage they would share?
So I know some of those groups that want more money.
Right.
So I don't know, I have taught, when we, there has not been a meeting with the leadership of all those organizations, not because it hasn't been attempted, but it hasn't come together. So, yes, sir?
How does the size of this facility compare to the folks and relative to the population?
Okay. I don't know, I don't have that in front of me, but I think Mokina is. I would say Mokina's about, I was gonna say Mokina's pretty spot on size. The difference is I would say, is that they have passed the bond referendums. So that we didn't do, the Park District weren't able to pass referendums. I think there was one in the late 90s or early 2000s. They were able to do one, and that's how they built the original Oaks. And then when their referendum, their bond was gonna expire, they reissued it, and that's how they built the expansion of the Oaks. As far as square footage, I think the Oaks might be bigger than A or B. The problem is that it's almost all gym space. I believe the expansion has 3 gyms, the old building has 2 gyms with a walking track, but they don't have a lot of community space. So the space that we currently have here that we use for HOA meetings, our karate classes, our yoga, they don't have a lot of extra space besides gym space. There's a walking track. They do have a small preschool building out back, but they don't have a lot of general community space. So.
Then last question was, you have 4 options that you said. What is your process for determining which option does go ahead?
We've got a lot of process after this evening, so some of it is just kind of see some of the polling information. There is potentially going to be a follow-up survey that will be on our website. We haven't really quite decided what that would look like until we have tonight's meeting. And then it would be going back to the drawing board and deciding if any of these have any merit, doing some more statistical surveying and finiting the cost and the operating for any of these buildings if we move it forward. So there's a lot of work to do between now and next fall. I thought there was a question down here, if not the gentleman in the flannel.
Maybe I'm wrong, but back to the in and out. Didn't the developer have that before and he couldn't get the in and out? And that was the reason why he sold it. He was going to put a strip mall there or something and he couldn't get the in and out either.
I don't know, that's before my time. I don't know the answer to that question. So, yes, sir.
It seems like right we look at that once we get the data and funded appropriately ahead of money and a healthy budget provide facilities. A lot of years. Communities really along the
So let me summarize your question just for everyone else that couldn't hear you. So how long has the Park District been underfunded? And it seems like the community didn't support the Park District, that the Park District didn't, right? Is that kind of where we're at? So I mentioned in the 90s that the Park District lowered the tax rate when Prestwick came on. I think that was in like 1992, 93. And no one knew that P-TEL was coming that would level that off. So back then, though, the community was only about 3,500 people, and it was enough. But then as the community grew and we went from having 3 parks to having 20 parks, and then to have facilities, almost all of the playgrounds, the community parks that were built by developers when they built the subdivision because parks sell homes. And so now they're all coming due for replacement, as well as the school district was kind enough to sell us this building for $1, but it too is now gone from being 80 years old to being 100 years old.
30, 40 years. People not paying up for their property. I would be not paying up to maintain your home or maintain one of your assets.
You've been listening. I appreciate that. Well, and that's why we're here, and that's the ask. And I probably haven't said it yet, and I just appreciate everyone being here tonight, and I appreciate all of the feedback, because the one thing we've been able to do over the last 9 years I've been here is to engage the community and educate. And I don't know that any of these are gonna pass. And I hope in my time here that I've served the residents and our staff has, that we're able to do something for the residents. And that's really what we're grateful that you're all here and you're providing feedback and that we're getting feedback and sharing our story. Thank you. When people have said that same thing to us, they go to Mokina to play basketball because this is just sad. Doesn't make coming to work every day great, but other questions?